wild story for you all before we jump in today. You know, long before we had MRIs or our fancy cortisol charts, cultures tracked change through cycles of energy. And the year of the snake was never about reinvention. It was about discernment. Snakes shed not because they want to, but because staying the same becomes too painful. And we are in the last few days of the year of the snake, if people followed Chinese New Year, and even those who don't. This is incredibly interesting culturally, metaphorically, historically, and even mentally incredibly interesting stuff that we're going to dive into today under this sort of lens of the year of the snake as we go into the year of the horse. So stay with me, listeners, because what I said here about snakes shedding, not because they want to, but because staying the same becomes too painful. And on the other side of that, we have the fire horse, which is what we're getting into come February 17th. And historically, the fire horse is rare and kind of controversial because in many traditions, it symbolized independence, rebellion, especially in women. Fire horse energy moved before approval, often disrupting family systems and expectations. Is that not incredibly pertinent to what the Raw Onion discusses every single week? And as we welcome you back for our episode 1 of our theme this month, welcome to the Raw Onion, everybody listening, and welcome to this theme called The Shed, Why You're Not Who You Were Anymore. And if listeners have been following along for some time now, you know that we're operating here at the Raw Onion in chunks. We like to do a series of really interesting and tightened up themes so that we can action take on the theme, that we can actually do something about what we are talking about. We don't want to just spin some information and spit it out back to you guys so that you have something to listen to. We actually want to do the work, and we do it with you. And whatever we share with you, you can trust that Yoshie, my beautiful co-pilot here on the Raw Onion, and I are doing it too right along with you. And so as we sort of look in and pay some attention to this snake energy and the awareness of letting go, we're going to prompt everyone about what this theme and this series for February is all about. It's why you're not who you were anymore. And as we talk about the snake energy and the cycles of energy that our ancestors used, they didn't have machines. They didn't have iPhones that are tracking their heart rate. They didn't have your Apple Watch. They were going with the cycles of energy. And actually, interesting fact, in Chinese sexagenary cycle, and that's what it's called with the Lunar New Year's, the snake and the horse are both ruled by fire. Did you know that? I didn't know that. I did a deep dive and I thought this was fascinating, so I wanted to share it with you. So the snake and the fire horse that's coming up are both ruled by fire, but they express it in opposite ways. And this is why we're talking about it, because this is what we're going to really dive into, especially today. The snake is yin fire, internal, smoldering, strategic, like a neural network quietly wiring itself behind the scenes. That's why they say the snake all last year, right? And it's now ending. The snake is about the shed. It's about shedding the internal, the smoldering. It's rewiring itself behind the scenes, as opposed to the fire horse, which is yang fire. External, explosive, kinetic. It's the fire that moves. It's the fire that changes forward, that charges and demands action. So when you move from the year of the snake into the year of the fire horse, you're not changing elements. You're flipping the switch from hidden combustion to open ignition. So, what most people don't realize is that the snake and the fire horse are actually the same element. And what have we been talking about for several weeks now? Identity shifting, that we don't need to completely change who we are, that we can come with the same element of who we are to our core. Our soul doesn't change, but it's that difference when we're working internally on ourselves and that we need to do that first. We always talk about that on the Raw Onion. You know that at this point, listeners, right? It's a process. It's slow. It's tough. We're not trying to sugarcoat it. This is not easy work. And that's why we want people to say, hey, let's look at identity shifting as something small, as something lifelong, as something to honor ourselves rather than force change. And so when we're looking at the snake as a yin fire, the fire horse as the yang, that's a fully encompassed human being. You're not letting yourself go. You're not being disloyal to yourself because it's actually the same element. The difference is that the snake is fire inside the nervous system, quiet, coiled, calculating, while the fire horse is fire in the muscles, in the mind. It's the same spark, but it's totally different behavior. And that's what we're going to look into today, guys. So again, welcome, sincerely welcome to the Raw Onion. We are so happy that you're here. It is the beginning of February. We just had a gorgeous full moon. We are ready to get grounded, intimate, and quietly disruptive while we internally prepare for the year of the fire horse. So the first thing we want to look at is, here we are. We're snakes. We're shedding those final few weeks of what we know needs to kind of revamp itself and rewire internally, because shedding is biological. It's not personal. Take, for example, the snake biology. Let's break it down. Let's have some fun with this. Shedding literally begins when growth creates friction. That's exactly how Mother Nature intended it. Old skin, dull sensation, and it restricts movement. Think about, let's say, if you've ever had a sunburn, right? And it's a really bad one, and you know that it's going to peel, and it's just really tight and hot, and it gets really uncomfortable, and that skin just sort of, I just want to get out of my skin because I am done with this skin. And sure enough, what does your body naturally do? It peels. So that old skin sensation dulls and restricts that movement. You need to get rid of it. If you apply that analogy to where we are in terms of gently shifting our identity, that's the first step. Yeah, get out of that skin. And usually, vision often clouds before the shed. Vulnerability precedes clarity. Let me say that one more time. You know I like to repeat things when they're important. Vulnerability precedes clarity. What do I mean by that? You're going to have to get comfortable with sitting there a bit raw before your beautiful new skin comes to the surface. That raw post-sunburn fresh skin that oh my God, I'm going to be soft as a baby maybe in 2 weeks. Right now, it's a little crusty and gross. And I feel vulnerable. I feel kind of, I don't want to go out in public like this. That's the step first. Vulnerability. Get comfortable with that because you know that clarity is coming. The smoothness is coming. It also can translate to us. Reduced tolerance for noise or chaos or emotional labor. Heck, I know I'm in that. Or roles feel heavier than they used to. Without being wrong, let's say those roles that you've carried your entire life, that you've had pride in undertaking, maybe they're feeling heavier these days. Maybe it's time to shed. The body protests before the mind catches up. Your body's going to feel it. Maybe people would accumulate this to a midlife crisis, even though I say, no, I don't actually like the word crisis because I like the word rewiring. As a neuroscience nerd, Yoshie and I can both attest to this. Words matter, and it is far, far from a crisis. It is actually the complete opposite. You are liberating yourself. This is the time in life where you're actually allowed to finally take stock of what you want. That is far, far, far from a crisis. And I think most of you will agree with me. If we frame it, this is the beginning of incredible freedom. And irritation is often the first signal of growth. When things aren't really fitting right anymore, that little irritation, it's not something like a pebble in your shoe. It's like, wait a minute, this isn't my life anymore. I need to switch this up. So that should help you, and I hope that it does help kind of reframe that from frustration to information. Take stock of what's going on and frame it in the way that it needs to be framed to move forward. Because, listeners, as we sort of dive in again here, year of the fire horse, and we're right at the tail end of the snake, we know the brain doesn't let go of that snake identity, but it outgrows that identity. And why are we here? Why were we born? To grow. To grow. Not to stay the same. So the brain doesn't ask, who do I want to be? It's asking, what keeps me alive with the least energy? Notice when a snake sheds, it's not doing much. It's resting. It's resting. Because the neuroscience lens to this is something I like to call predictive cost model. Let's bring it back out of the snake for just a second here, even though I do kind of like the snake analogy on all this because it really does fit beautifully, and that's the point of this whole episode, but it really is, in human speak, predictive cost models. Identity is a cost calculation. Familiar roles, that equals cheaper, even if it's painful. It's autopilot. We don't have to think. So we're not giving as much energy. But those new ways of being, that process of stepping in from snake to horse, that's expensive until it's proven safe. And why does this matter now, at the cusp of sort of this midlife? Let's talk about folks who are entering into the 40 to 50 to 60 year category. In midlife, the brain updates its cost models automatically, whether you like it or not. And that's why it's important that we talk about the shedding today. Because, again, what did we just talk about? Shedding is biological. So this is something that we cannot control. It's going to happen. We just have to prepare ourselves to do it with grace. So in midlife, the brain updates itself. Hormonal shifts, change, stress tolerance. What you could handle 10 years ago, you will not be able to handle today. It's meant to be that way. This is the time to shed. Long-term overfunctioning becomes unsustainable. Old identities start costing more than they return. Your ROI has to be reassessed. So take the high achiever whose body no longer recovers. Maybe at 30, you could run a 10-mile sprint. And now at 44, 45, 50, 60, hey, not saying you can't. I have much respect to all those distance runners out there. Couldn't do it. I respect you. But maybe recovery is taking longer now. Or the caretaker who becomes numb instead of fulfilled. Talk about the sandwich generation. You're still raising kids, or maybe they've just left the nest, and now you're caring for older relatives. So your capacity has to change. It has to update itself. And if you're going to be a caretaker, we know very well how hard that is. You're going to need to shed that old mentality in order for you to level up to be able to open more capacity. Or the easygoing one who suddenly can't fake it. Hey, we just cannot pretend. At a certain age, it costs too darn much. So you didn't lose capacity, but the cost changed. So why do you feel like a stranger to yourself? Well, identity isn't just belief or memory, it's a state-dependent situation. So when your brain encodes who I am differently in high urgency and chronic stress, in true regulation, many women spend decades accessing identity through stress-based states. And that happened to me. That's why I'm a burnout coach and consultant now. I had no off button. I was working 80 hours a week. I didn't get a day off in 4 years. Is that healthy? Oh my God, absolutely not. I ended up in the ER. Really, I'm not kidding. Can I do that today? Not even if I wanted to. My body physically would not let me. I could not ever go back to that level of chronic stress and high urgency again. My physiology wouldn't allow it. And thank goodness for that, right? Thank goodness for that. So maybe you think, well, if I can't sustain this state, I used to thrive under pressure. I don't recognize myself anymore. I don't know who I am without that adrenaline. Well, hey, some versions of you only existed because your nervous system was overriding itself. That does not equip to the same kind of energy you need to continue on in midlife. And the one thing nobody talks about is the grief that nobody names when you're decommissioning an identity, when you're taking it out to pasture, when you're shedding an identity. And that's what we call identity decommissioning at the Raw Onion, when the nervous system retires strategies before the mind approves. Because when you're done, you're done. You are done. And sometimes your brain just can't even try to say, all right, legs, kick it up a notch. Nope, when you're done, you're done. That is identity decommissioning. You have to allow the shed. Because the next step is the mind, the muscles, they're going to come back in a new way. You're going from snake to horse. But there is a grief without a clear loss in this stage. It's a sadness without a story. You have to allow yourself to grieve that past version of yourself. That is the beautiful thing. I began this practice a while back, and I tell you, there are moments, and I just told Yoshie this morning, I started Pilates up again. And my goodness, the tears that came when I started to open up the hips, because there's a shift that is happening within me right now. There's a lot of grief that is stored, because it's not necessarily sad, but I am grieving the past version of myself, and it felt glorious. Listeners, it felt glorious. It felt like literally the insides of myself were shedding all of that extra old, outdated, mechanical machinery inside me. It was all just dead energy, and it had to be released. Whew, that shed was real. And that is not depression. That was honoring the grief that I'd stored for so long. Life is happy, and life is also part of grieving. You have to allow both. And so those moments when you're in that snake shedding element, and when you're thinking, oh my gosh, I can't do what I used to do. I'm shifting my identity, but it's closure without the ceremony. It's gentle work, it's private work. It's work that you really have to allow yourself to dive into. And this happens to both men and women, so let's not forget our male listeners out there. This is not female specific. All right? Men, women. Yeah, we process differently, but it happens to all of us, and we're not broken. We're finished with something. And we have to allow that. So what happens after the grief? Well, we've got grief plus stress plus the shed. What could happen? Oh, burnout. But in this case, we're not going to call it burnout. And I'm the burnout coach, and I'm even changing the name. We're calling it resource reallocation, not collapse. All right? Resource reallocation. Chronic stress forces the brain to conserve. It stops funding non-essential identities, and burnout is often a reallocation of the resource. Ambition fades before that desire to do something new returns. Clarity comes only after rest. Allow yourself to rest. Clarity will not come before. Simplicity starts to feel sacred. How many people do you talk to these days that just want a small little plot of land with some farm animals and a couple dogs running around? The simplicity starts to sound amazing after 40. Am I the only one here raising my hand? Because our nervous system is choosing sustainability over performance. Sustainability is the new identity. And that reduces the shame of not operating in always the urgent, yes, problem solving right now. Chill out. Allow the shed. Simplicity starts to feel sacred. That's when we thrive. That's when we thrive. So how do we move through the shed without forcing the horse? The horse is coming. The horse is coming in about 2.5 weeks. But we don't need to force it, not action, but with conditions. Okay, here are the conditions. So as we prepare and as we're in the final weeks of shedding and stepping into that beautiful new identity, we have conditions we have to meet. Micro withdrawals. So think about this. Yoshie and I will always tell you this shift into a new identity is a process, and we need to feel safe. The brain needs to feel safe before anything else. We know this now. So micro withdrawals. That is, for lack of better terms, it's called safe identity release. So instead of dramatic change, because we're not going to accept dramatic change, there's no need for it. We know that. Explain less. If you're an over-explainer, explain less. Say less, as the kids say today. Or do one thing slower. One thing, brush your teeth a little slower. Drink the tea, drink the coffee a little bit slower. Let one relationship stay incomplete. Maybe there's a situation you've got going on, but you just don't have the power or the energy to put into trying to fix it right now. If it's not an emergency, let it be for now. You're focusing on you. Why? Why does this all work? These tiny little things? Well, the brain updates identity through evidence, not insight. Evidence is going to come when it feels safe. So you can rebuild trust with the body while you're doing this. Ask yourself, what drains me immediately? Because it's going to be different today than it was 10 years ago. Reassess yourself. What drains me later? Maybe you can still do the thing, but the recovery period is taking you out. Take stock. Reassess. What restores without stimulation? What can you do while you're just sitting here living your life, just being you, sitting, doing nothing? What can restore you? Okay? Think about how easy. Now, those are easy. Anybody can do those. I will vouch for that. Even I can do those. And I'm tough to recalibrate my patterns. Because we update self-identity faster than thought. And you got to name the phase, not the future. All right? Replace who am I becoming with, hey, I am in my pruning phase. I'm in recalibration phase. Or maybe I'm in internal reorganization phase. Treat yourself like a mini corporation. But treat yourself way better than corporations treat us. Let's put it that way. That's a topic for another day. But reassess. Take that time. Because phases don't need certainty. They need honesty. And listen, between skins is not behind. If we're in that post-sunburn peeling phase, just be tender to yourself. Because if you're feeling now you're at a phase in life where you're needing to identity shift, if it feels quieter, slower, or maybe you're less willing to do the things you used to do, you're not late. You're between skins. So next episode, we're going to talk about how the body signals that readiness for action as we're getting closer to that muscle-mind activation of the fire horse. Remember, the shed of the snake, that burning of that horse, it is the yin and yang of the same thing. You're shifting your identity only to shift to the current phase of your life. You're still honoring who you are at your core. And next episode, like we said, we're going to talk about those body signals that are ready for action and why real momentum feels clean, not frantic. You don't need to know who you're becoming today. You just need to stop pretending the old skin still fits. That's all for the raw onion from Yoshie and myself, Stephanie. Thank you all for listening. Always continue to peel. I couldn't have thought of a better episode than this as an analogy for the raw onion. We are all about peeling and shedding, and all of the stuff that comes out, we know that the good stuff is right there after the peel. That's where the meat is. That's where the beauty is. And that's where we're all going together. So thank you so much, listeners. Stay tuned for next week. We are the raw onion. Over and out.